Welcome to the Grimfrost Podcast. Today's guest is Daniel Serra, experimental archaeologist, co-author of An Early Meal, a Viking Age cookbook, and leading expert on Viking Age food. So, Daniel, welcome to our longhouse. We've been looking forward to this for a long time because we're going to talk about food, and we love food, don't we?
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Well, food is important to everyone. I mean, whatever you think about food, food has a role in your life. That's why I'm working with it.
Yeah, definitely. I must say that's an impressive beard, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. I actually had mine trimmed the other day.
Yeah, I need to get my trimmed.
Yeah.
Though, but
So getting back to food now, because that was a sort of a digression.
Yeah.
But where did, or like history, because you like history. Where did your interest in history and the Viking Age specifically begin?
My interest in history started when I was like this tall.
Yeah.
I've always been interested in history. Actually, my first memory is me being in Glyptoteket in Copenhagen. There was Egyptian, Etruscan, Roman exhibitions, and a room which was filled with sort of valuables. And so I was really excited about it, and I was leaning against the window, starting the alarm, and the doors closed, and but I had a really good guard, so I wasn't deterred, but rather I was. This is one of my first memories of sort of museums, yes, the history interest has always been there. Probably my father is somehow, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure where it came.
Maybe I had it with the breast milk, as you
Probably,
say.
yes. It's somewhere early, but yes.
So it started very early. So, but why did you decide to specialize in food then, as your particular?
Yeah, so so when I started studying archaeology, I was curious because I sort of was. I mean, I was in my 20s. I started to learn. I always liked food. I mean, you can see it on me, but I was always liked food. At that point, I started cooking myself. And then when I studied archaeology, I was curious. Well, what did they eat? So I actually started doing classic archaeology, so ancient Roman, ancient Greek. And then I started to do some recipes from Apicius, looking into that. What did they taste like? What did they eat? And then I did some medieval archaeology, did medieval food, and prehistoric, and did some looking into some experimental archaeology. And then I got a chance to do my PhD. Oh, no, before that, I did this medieval food quite a bit. And so I was finished. I did my master in archaeology, and me and my colleague Hanna Thunberg, we started a small catering business doing medieval food, trying to lure people into knowing more about medieval or prehistoric and historic times through food. But then in 2003, I got a chance to start on a PhD. And since I was a prehistoric archaeologist rather than medieval, I sort of got into making, then I go for Viking Age.
Oh, okay.
And the sort of experimental archaeology there, that's late enough to have a variety and influence from other places. We have enough of sources, so that would be an interesting part.
You mentioned, sorry for interrupting you, but you mentioned experimental archaeologist because that is what you are.
Yeah.
Anyway. So can you tell us the difference between an experimental archaeologist and an actual archaeologist?
Well,
or a traditional, maybe.
Traditional is a better word. Because
sorry.
I'm still an actual.
You are an actual archaeologist. I know. I meant traditional.
Yes.
I'm really sorry about that.
Traditional archaeology is we excavate things. We do interpretations from the finds, where they're sort of how they are related to each other. What can we see? What can we observe? So it's traditional archaeology, in a sense, could be said to be observational archaeology. You draw conclusions, much like you would do in a sort of crime scene. You find the evidence, you draw conclusions. Experimental archaeology is to test it out to see if the conclusions we draw has some bearing. Can we reproduce it? sort of say traditional experimental archaeology, then you go in with the sense, all right, we want to test, can this theory be proven? Did they use these kind of knives to cut this kind? Would it give the same cut marks? Will it look exactly the same? So that's one part. I would say my approach is a bit more experiential experimental archaeology.
Okay.
In that I try to cook food using the sort of the knowledge we have, the equipment we have, and also learn from doing, not just having a hypothesis and verifying it. So I start off by looking into what result do I get from using this. Then I build a hypothesis. Then I try that out, and so it's an ongoing, and it's an iteration of. So it's not just a sort of exclusive experiment where it's a very closed experiment. That's what you would sort of do in a traditional scientific sense.
Would you say it's a more difficult approach to, or is it a more what intrigues you with this approach to archaeologists?
Yes, because it's
archaeology. Sorry,
archaeology. Well, it is for me. It's not more difficult. It's a different way of approaching it, and of course, when it comes to food, because food and some other things are more intangible than let's say, if you're looking into actual craft is the wrong word, but sort of if you have something that's very verifiable.
Yeah, like pottery or...
Pottery, yes. Yeah. You can see, well, this is how it was made. You can reconstruct that. But food is it's an intangible culture. It's consumed. So we don't really have the remains that can tell us of the actual result. We can see remains. We can find... So you have to build. And that's, I think that's also part of my sort of imagination coming into this play. I find it interesting to start building from all these building blocks and see what can you get, how can you get to this.
Yeah.
So it's a bit, for me, it's the sort of challenge in it as well.
Yeah.
But of course, the most important part is that the result is something you can experience. So you experience the food in a way I can't experience other crafts in the same way. But food, well, the same would be with music or art, anything that's sort of you immerse yourself in.
Yeah, plus also taste is such a powerful...
Exactly.
It's such a powerful sense.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's what I mean. That's sort of... Taste is something that everyone can tell it, and you can sort of... it goes within you, so to speak. It's very immersive.
Something very deep.
Something very deep.
Yeah.
We can't really tell if taste was the same then as now. So that's where we have to sort of go by tabula rasa. We can't really look into modern cooking and go back and say, well, it should taste like this because modern logic say that. So I have had to redefine some tastes.
But you said you started out with Roman cooking and ancient Roman food, but then you did actually have like a cookbook with recipes.
Exactly, so that's the difference.
So what was the Roman food like? Did they have pizza?
No. Although there are some arguments from a painting that there was some proto-pizza, but I'm not sure if I would call that pizza, but still.
Yeah.
So the Roman food, I would say, is quite often they use sort of seafood. It's a bit like Mediterranean food, but take away tomatoes, take away anything.
No tomatoes?
No, that's post-Columbian exchange thing.
Oh,
that's
of course it comes in,
so no corn, no, so it's all that, take away that. You would have and you should also look into more traditional Italian and Mediterranean food, not the tourist way, it's not the festive food, but quite a lot of beans, lentils with olive oil, this kind of basic stuff.
Which I guess is food now that you often find in the Middle East. That
as well. But you also, definitely find it in the Middle East, but you find it in sort of more traditional Southern Italian or Southern Greek cuisine, like lentil stew with some olive oil put on top. Some of the tastes that are sort of common in the ancient Roman food would be lovage, olive oil, black pepper, and wine. So that's quite a few recipes that start that way. And of course, garum, the fish sauce.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yes. Which is umami, salty, and that's more or less what it gives.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very fascinating. So, but then you went into, as you said, like the Viking Age and the Viking Age cookbook, which is your doctorate dissertation together with Hanna Tuberg.
Well, it's it was so to be here, completely clear here. So it was supposed. I worked on a doctorate dissertation. I ran out of money, so then I sort of transformed. I took all the thing I've been working on, started cooperating with Hanna. Well, we've been cooperating before, and started. Well, I have enough background to make a cookbook. Now let's do some recipes. And this was a year after I worked in Lofoten the summer. So after I ran out of money, I took the summer working in Lofoten, reconstructing recipes.
Yeah. So then you made this book,
yes,
an early meal, which coincidentally also is available at www.grimfrost.com if you want to check it out. It's an amazing book. I really enjoyed this. So it is an amazing source for Viking Age food. So when you approached Hanna about this, what was the main idea behind it, or what did you guys want to focus on?
Well, that's all right. Yeah, that's interesting because there are some. I mean, we all both have some connections to reenactment, but the approach to Viking food at the time, and still in many places, it's the Viking Age. It's more or less the same everywhere. It's you make Viking Age food or Viking Age culture. It's sort of a blend of. So what we want to show here is the difference between places, difference between different social status. So different social strata, the place or context, all these play a role on the food. So and regional varieties and also preferences. So we wanted to show that there are differences. We wanted to get, as I said, tabula rasa. We wanted to build it up from experimental archaeology rather than just take traditional dishes and take away things, or doing something just pragmatic.
Yeah.
So we had to work with all right. So for instance, one of the things that I do have a struggle with, especially when people are trying it out for the first time, or reading it out, I should say, because usually when they try it, they accept it. But the lack of salt. So we had to accommodate that, well, there is not much of the salt import at the time. And there's not much salt production either. There's no evidence of that, looking at the vessels, looking at what we have. So how should we approach the food from that sense?
Okay.
And that's, I mean, for a modern person or post 14th century person in Scandinavia, salt is very important. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting. So what can you tell us about, like, especially like spices and like, well, I guess Viking food in general, how would you describe it, like with spices and everything?
I would say that it's. I mean, it's not strongly spiced. I would say two of the major taste lines, so to speak, is umami is there because you would use dried or smoked or to some extent salted, but dried and smoked would be the main preservation. So you would have the umami from that. You would have acidity from pickling, from adding some sourness into the food. So that would be the sort of two main taste groups. Then you would have some bitterness and some herbs you could use like dill, parsley, juniper berries, etc. So you will have some a smaller variety, but still a variety of herbs that you use into it. But we have one thing you noticed when doing this food is that by sort of adding a bit more acidity, either through malt vinegar or through whey. I use whey quite a lot in the cookbook.
Okay.
You sort of can fool the taste buds a bit when it comes to salt.
Oh, okay.
So it's you don't have the same need for saltiness.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And of course, fat also plays in a role. We use...
Because I would assume salt was like an important ingredient in the food back then, but...
Yes, it is important, but in storing. So you use it for... And I would say, and this is not really provable yet, but I would say that you would have salt in a sort of step into the preservation process, like you make a salted or dried, salted and smoked, but not like you would have later on when you salt herring, you salt meat.
Oh, okay.
Because that uses quite a lot of salt.
Yeah.
And it would be a very expensive import.
Yes. Yeah, the Baltic definitely is not a very salty sea to make your own salt from. So
and we know we know from the sagas, to this extent we can trust them, that they imported salt from England, for instance.
Oh, okay. That's interesting, actually. Yeah, I didn't know that. So, but there are, what went into, like, making this book? I mean, what sources are there for the food?
Yeah, so of course, archaeology is the first thing.
Yeah.
So we find, there are finds of bones, there are finds of seeds. These are the two main sort of finds we're looking at, but there are also finds of parasites can tell us something. You can see, you can see them, but it has not been used that much in Viking Age. But you can also look into human bones and see, for instance, if they eat more maritime food or land-based food.
Is that a kind of DNA?
Yeah, DNA or carbon. It's not carbon dating, but it's also carbon isotopes can give us some ideas on that.
Oh, yeah.
So you can get some ideas there. Pollen analysis, of course, can also give. And if you're lucky, you can find feces, like the Jorvik turd.
Yeah.
And that can also give quite a lot.
Which I only learned about today, actually, the Jorvik turd. I never heard about that before.
Oh, you should check it out if you go there.
Okay, yeah.
It's on display.
All right, yeah. I have to do that sometime.
I think that's the most, that's the highest sort of insured piece of turd there is.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you can polish one then, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's not go there.
So those are sort of, but then you also have equipment, cooking equipment. You have the context, you have the hearth, you have the place where people and the thing were cooked. And all these are steps in my sort of list of running through experimental archaeology. So I start with looking at the ingredients. How do they cook? Can they combine? Next step is how do they combine with the equipment? So for instance, I'm cooking grain in a soapstone vessel. How does that compare to cooking grains in an iron kettle? I'm not sure. Have you tried cooking porridge in an iron kettle?
No, I have not actually. We did, as I said before, we did a little segment with Hannah.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, also is you can see that on the Grimfrost YouTube channel and the Grimfrost web page. I think it's really fun actually. But then we had an iron kettle and we were cooking spelt. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the problem with using iron kettles for that is it's twofold. One is it will discolor food.
Yeah.
The second one, and that's more important when it comes to porridge, is that it will stick. And it's quite hellish to clean. So if you use a stone vessel instead, it's sort of a natural non-stick, these soapstone vessels. So I would say I recommend them, especially for porridge. The iron vessels you will use for... well, this is all right. Now I'm sort of getting ahead of myself. But yes, I tried it out and found that, all right, this doesn't really work well.
Yeah.
The spit works for smaller things and et cetera, et cetera. I find how they work. And then I combined the ingredients with the equipment. See, what can I do with this? The next step is to look into, okay, what inspiration can I get? It's like I get from the sagas, some It's descriptions. Some descriptions, I mean, sagas we know are written much later. And of course, quite a lot of it is medieval embellishment. But you also have sometimes sagas where the food stuff is so important that if we assume that the saga is an oral tradition, the food also would have been part of the oral tradition. For instance, like the saga about Sigurd, the dragon killer.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's supposed to be quite a lot. It's depicted in a picture stone in southern or mid-Sweden. So, yes, the saga is probably an oral tradition.
Yeah.
So we have two things there. In the first part, and this is nice with foreboding and everything, but in the first part, Sigurd kills a dragon. He cuts out the heart, and he roasts it. And it's quite clear. And he's tasting it, and he can hear the birds saying that, well, you should eat the whole heart and get him invulnerable. So he does that, gets the dragon treasure, kills the dragon, kills people, get a curse, and the usual stuff. But we got two things there. Heart as food.
Yes.
And also roasting the heart.
It's food.
Yes,
yeah.
but also how it's prepared.
How it's prepared, yeah.
Yes. And it's actually how it's depicted. He sits with a spear with the heart on in the picture stone.
Yeah.
So that gives us an idea of kind of food and how it's cooked. Then by the end, because this treasure, it's a curse, and it goes from person to person, and of course, when you get the treasure, you will get the curse, and you will die in horrible ways. So end part, it comes to King Atle. King Atle has stolen it from some Scandinavian minor king, killed off the male, married the daughter, taken the gold. So his wife then is not too happy. She wants revenge. But she waits. And then in the saga, she gets 2 children with him, and then there's the feast, and she offers him gold-plated beakers with red mead and lamb's heart tasting of honey. And then she presents saying, well, the mead isn't red by itself. It's colored with the blood of your children, our children.
Brutal.
The beakers, it's not just any golden beakers. It's the head of your children or the skull of your children plated in gold. And the lamb's heart, well, it's not lamb. And then she kills him. And
that is what I call a revenge.
It is, but what we got here, yes, that's definitely. Yeah. But here, the food, the heart is sort of essential for this tale. It's in the beginning and the end. It sort of ties the whole tragic epic together, and it describes how it tastes.
Oh yeah.
So we get it's honey taste.
Honey taste.
It's upper class, of course. It's spit roasted. So that gave me a lot of input into how to sort of prepare a dish.
And also that they actually ate lamb's heart.
Yes.
Even.
Yeah. So you get all these kind of. Yes, I didn't use any children's heart or dragon's heart.
Of course not.
They're too expensive. But yes, so I got into sort of that gave me a whole lot of input, and then I could try it again. Did some addition to it, made it played a bit with the color, etc. So yeah, so that's how I got and sort of the input, and that's how I. Well, actually, I forgot one thing that I do in before everything. I talk about tabla rasa. I sort of wipe the slate from sort of modern thinking of cooking. Then I also look into things that we don't have, sort of how to redefine things. We don't have a fridge, so most things will be dried or smoked or salted or prepared. We don't eat with forks. And that sort of influences how you cut up meat, for instance. A knife and a fork. If you eat with a knife and fork, then you will eat in a different way than if you don't.
Of course.
You don't serve à la russe. That is, you don't get a plate with everything on it. So you'll pick rather small things. So all these kind of small things sort of helps clean the plate for me to start doing experiments.
Mm. So in this book, there are like an actually impressive number of recipes. So with that amount of work going into it, like how did you manage to piece all these recipes together? What, like, it must have been like very, very tedious work almost.
Well, not tedious. That was
Well,
actually quite fun work. So
yeah.
that's sort of look at it as that. I mean, that's the sort of piecing it together. It's a fun part. Then it's sort of writing it up and stuff. That sort of gets tedious at times. But
Yeah.
piecing it together, that's a sort of the intellectual puzzle work, so to speak. So that's quite interesting to see. Well, does this work? What do we have? Oh, what sources do we have for here? And so it was. I mean, making a cookbook. You have to go from two directions. We need a balance in the cookbook.
Yeah.
So no, we need something that sort of fits this. So for this area, we need another recipe for this area. Okay, what finds do we have? Or I need something to balance out because, well, of course, even at that time, you wouldn't have just one type of food. It would be a bit different. So, well, could we have something else? So to sort of flesh out the menu a bit. Well, if we look at this find, and then we sort of start working there. So it's yes, it is this kind of patchwork of ideas that you have to puzzle together. But yes, that's actually the fascinating part.
Yeah. Because I know, like, for instance, when I cook, I have my, like, go-to recipes, obviously, but, you know, every once in a while you do something and you just, like, kind of like, I'm just going to add a little bit of this.
Yeah.
Especially when you do, like, I don't know, like bolognese or something, you know, just add some stuff. But making recipes, you kind of have to balance it out with spices and everything. And, like, how do you go about that? That must be really tricky to find the right measurements.
That's a good thing of working with Hannah or working like two and two. That is, I can start doing a recipe, or Hannah does, and then we can send it to each other sort of in a raw state. I take a sort of this amount and this amount-ish.
Ah, okay.
And then she tries it out and redefines a bit. And then we sort of get to a compromise that, oh no, that is, the taste gets too far this way, or, yeah.
I hear you. Yeah, that makes total sense. Because also the palate is often very personal. So,
yes.
So that to make it work for most people, that's going to be a challenge by itself.
It is. And we do have different palates as well. So that's, of course, we have things that, for instance, coriander is something that I eat and she can't.
Yeah, some people just don't like it.
Yeah. So there are other stuff that could work like that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I hear you. So I think it's very fascinating. It's something that's insanely interesting. But you are also a lecturer at museums and you host workshops and stuff like that. So what generally surprises people about Viking Age food when you talk to them or introduce them to it?
Well, it's difference between the workshops and the... Well, one thing that sort of surprises people is that it is quite diverse. It is so it's more refined than they expect. I mean, most people would expect something that's sort of barbarian.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the end scenes if you read Asterix and Obelix, people stuffing their faces with a full pig.
Yeah.
That's sort of what you sometimes get as an expectation. Either that, and it's also, of course, and that's more in the workshop, people expect things to be roasted all the time. So it's meat and it's roasted.
Yeah.
That's sort of quite a common base expectation.
Yes.
And actually, I mean, for instance, one thing that we do much more today than in historical times is frying. So the food today, I would say, is 30-40% is fried.
Yeah.
Whereas in the medieval or Viking Age period, you would have most of it would be just boiled or simmered.
Yeah.
So that's a completely different way of approaching the food.
Definitely.
So that, of course, as I said before, salt is often seen as a surprising thing. What else is it that people are usually... Well, it's sort of it's a bit more
Well, I can go to myself
Yes.
because when we did that thing with Hannah, we did this kind of, I'm not sure you can call it a stew, but we mixed like smoked lamb
Yeah.
with pieces of apple, and we had the spelt barley.
Yeah.
Actually, oregano, which I was actually surprised to hear was a common herb during the Viking Age. Because I always associate that with
pizza
or Mediterranean food. And a healthy chunk of butter, of course, but still, I was and a bit of cheese. I think we had in there as well. But still, I was so amazed about like how flavorful it was, and what, as you say, the umami.
Yes,
and it was. That surprised me a lot, actually.
Yeah, actually, the recipe that surprised people the most, in both good and bad ways, is when I made fish porridge. Porridge using dried cod. Dried cod was even an export during the Viking Age. So I get hold of dried cod's head, beat it, make a stock out of it, and make the porridge like almost a risotto kind of thing. And there you have this kind of heavy umami taste.
Oh, wow.
And it's almost, and this surprises me as well, almost get to taste like blue cheese into it.
Okay.
And it's sort of a bit sweetness and this kind of heavy umami.
Yeah.
And I use this with dill seeds and some malt vinegar. And it's really, when people appreciate it, it can be really good. Then, of course, you will have people who can't really stand fish.
Yeah.
And so you will have some people who sort of backs out of it.
Yeah.
But yes, but it's really something that surprised even me when it came to the taste.
Because for my first thought when you say that is because my grandfather was from Norway.
Okay, yeah.
So I spent a lot of time there, and something that we ate a lot was actually like when I was there was fish pudding.
Okay, yeah.
Which is basically made out of like boiling the bones of the cod and using the rest stuff and making this white cake.
Oh yes,
that you would eat sometimes with horseradish sauce or something. But but this seems to be like something different, or is it similar?
To be honest, even though I've worked in Norway, I haven't tried the fish pudding, so I can't really tell. But it's so the taste is not overly fishy, I would say. It's more like, as I say, the umami is more.
Yeah.
Have you tried?
Because that's what I experienced with fish pudding and Norwegian fish balls.
Yeah.
We have fish balls in Sweden.
Yes.
They taste very fishy, but the Norwegian, they don't.
Could be. Yeah, that's. I need to try them then.
Yeah.
But have you been to Lofoten or the north?
Yes.
And have you tried the stockfish there? So dried pieces of stockfish, which is, of course, it tastes like fish, but it also has a lot of other taste to it. And that is what I'm using for this food.
Oh, okay. Okay, then it makes sense. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about then.
Yeah, so that you got some, and that's really umami rich.
Yeah.
So today,
the Icelandic people, they use it as snacks.
Yes. Even in northern Norway, they sell it as snacks, and it's they used it with, and I think they still do, but I think it goes back to the medieval period at least, to eat flakes of it with butter.
I can imagine.
Yes, and butter is an old fish a condiment in Scandinavia.
Yeah, definitely. So you touched upon this before, but just to go a little bit more into it, like how did food differ between regions and classes in the Viking Age society?
Yes, all. So of course you have regional, it's easiest to start with. You will have much more grain in the south and much more dairy products in the north. You don't grow as much in the north, so you would have to import beer, for instance.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. That is a main sort of regional difference, and that sort of would be more. Of course, it's more to that than so, but you would have sort of dried cod would be much more common in northern Norway, but you export it to the southern Scandinavia and even to England. so that you all have it all over. Fish is important all over as well, but one of the main regional differences would be grain versus dairy products.
But I mean, there used to be. I remember fishing cod in the Baltic when I was a kid.
Yes,
so,
but it's not the same sort of availability.
no, okay.
I mean, there's a difference between the sort of fishing of cod in northern Norway in December or whenever it is, and making stockfish that will last for sort of dry them for half a year and then it'll last forever. And I mean, that's what's exported in quite a large mass. Later on in the medieval period, that's a huge export.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, that you say the stockfish, because if you ever been to Lofoten, they still preserve it much in the same way.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, where they have this massive built constructions where they hang the fish.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah. So and that would been the same, and it goes back to Viking Age. We have lots and lots of cultural impact of the stockfish in medieval period all over Europe. So it's even, I mean, the way of preparing stockfish in medieval and during Viking Age as well, it's not to do like today. Today we do, for instance, put in lye, or we soak it for a week. In northern Norway, they soak it for a week.
Yeah.
In Sweden, the way we eat it would be soak in lye.
Yeah.
Southern Europe, it's a bit different, but still.
Yeah.
The medieval period way is to beat it. So it's recipe saying, and so it says beat it for a good hour. It's 2 hours, I would say. And then you soak it for half a day in warm water, and then you cook it.
Oh, okay.
So it's a quicker way, but it sort of gets a very high cultural impact.
Yeah.
So, for instance, Shakespeare is using a term like Falstaff, I think it is. Falstaff is the sort of the rogue character in Henry VIII and Henry VI. And he's saying, at some point he's in a fight with someone and he tells them, "Come on, I'll beat you like a stockfish." It gives us a very good sense of how ingrained in society
it was.
And
so northern Norway, then, a lot of fish, a lot of cod.
Yes. But that would be all. But northern Norway, northern Europe, northern Scandinavia, a lot of dairy products. Sort of like soured milk, most possibly butter, cheese, and that would be very much part of it. Some grains, but then in south you would have a lot of grains, more bread, more beer, and that would be more the base. So if you make the porridges, and of course you would have more domesticated animals as well. They thrive better. Like pork would be thriving better in the south. So, of course, that would be also influencing the food. Then we're talking about, for instance, the differences between classes.
Yeah.
I would say for upper classes, you would have more of the roasted meat. That's sort of a bit more of the festive food. Like you'll have the roasted heart I told you about, or roasted fowl, a chicken that's been spit roasted. And it's you have this nice text from Rigstula, which is describing Heimdall going through the world, spending a night and evening in different classes, from the thrall to the free farmer to the jarl, and getting different food.
Oh, wow.
So at thrall, he gets a sort of a beef stew or beef soup with with a bread filled with remains, sort of.
Oh yeah,
sort of
leftovers.
Leftovers, from the thrashing, and then at the sort of jarl's table, he gets roasted fowl, he gets roasted pork, he gets white bread of wheat, which would also be a difference, and then other things that would be important, because we don't import that much, but what we do import is salt, as I said, honey, and wine, and mead. Of course, it's a honey in the way of being honey, and honey in the way of being mead. And that would be also upper class or festive food.
Yes.
And now we got to what is festive food versus daily food.
Of course,
so that's also a difference, of course. Daily food would probably be more like porridges, pottages, kind of stuff. Festive food, of course, you would have. So you would have the roasted food there. You would have the pit, cooking pit food in the early parts of the Viking Age. They make a whole pit, put a whole animal in it, cover it, and take it out. But also, you would of course have the pottages and stews there as well. I mean, depending on what you cook. But for instance, festive food would involve meat like horse meat.
Oh yeah,
and that's but then you're into a religious festivity, but it sort of blends together.
Yeah, but it's interesting that you talk about fish, grain, butter, stuff like that. But meat and vegetables.
Yes, well,
because I mean, you already said like the festive times. Yes, you would cook a whole animal maybe, but otherwise they're not. They're like the image of a Viking is like a big bone of.
No, I would say that yes, that's probably the wrong way of looking at it. So for everyday food, you would of course you would have some meat or fish. I mean, proteins in some kind.
Yeah,
but it will be. You have to look at this for the sort of year of the farm or year of larder economy. So you slaughter sometime in October, November. Then you make it, preserve it, you dry it, you smoke it. And then you use that meat for the rest of the year. And it will not be the large chunks of meat. It's rather you will have some piece of meat to give taste to it. So, for instance, if you do this kind of, as you described, this kind of pottage or porridge that you got in Stavgard with Hanna,
yeah,
or if you make some other porridges, I do quite a lot of porridge for everyday food. So, doing something, you cook a stock from this dried meat or the smoked meat. Use the stock for making the pottage, and then you chop up the meat finely, add it to it. It will be more like give some protein and give some taste to the food, but it will not be a chunk of food with something on the side. So I think we have to reverse the image, sort of where meat is important, but it's not as it's more important for your identity and for us being sort of an additive to the food, rather than being this is the main part of the food.
Yeah. Because also vegetables, I was thinking about vegetables because it's something that we often forget, that people of the Middle Age actually ate vegetables, but they obviously didn't make a salad.
No.
They did something different. But I looked a little bit at your Facebook page, the Memento, which is really interesting, by the way. So if you haven't, you should check it out. It's Memento. Past food.
Yeah, so facebook.com/past food.
Past food, yes. And there was, you made this, which my wife is going to love because she loves kale.
Yes.
And you made a kale porridge.
Yes.
Which I thought was very interesting.
It is really good. Also, that's actually my favorite recipe in the cookbook, though I can't eat it anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's using kale, and it uses fresh cheese that you make yourself, and whey. And whey is sort of a time bomb for lactose intolerant people.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So that's I can't eat it anymore, but it's really good. It really blends together the kale taste with this kind of acidity from the whey. Mm-hmm. And also when I do that recipe, and kale would have been important. Kale, turnips, there's another favorite recipe, and legumes like grape peas and broad beans. So those are the most important vegetables, I would say. Or, yes, you would use probably, what do you call it in English? Svinmolla. It's Chenopodium album in Latin. It's
Svinmolla. I know what this is.
You can check in the book in the back there.
We can look it up. We can put it in subtitles level later.
Do that. But yes, so this dish, as you say, with kale, it's really blends well together. So I'm using some fresh cheese. First I pre-cook it a bit with butter and some herbs if I want to, some onions. Usually I would use. Today I'm mainly using shallots because it's closer to the fines of potato onion. That's Jens Heimdall has presented a good argument for that being the original origin. So now I've gotten hold of some potato onions. So I should grow them at home to see if I can get more. But yes, but it's close related to shallot.
Mhm.
So I'm using that, and then I add some fresh cheese and some whey. And the way I cook it is sort of almost caramelizing
Oh, okay.
the cheese in the dish. So keep up a bit of temperature. Is this completely correct? We can't really tell, but you have the ingredients, you have the cooking methods.
Yes.
So I'm playing with the taste we have available there, but it really fits well together.
Yeah. That I think that's really like fascinating. But I actually kind of wanted to jump into something I was going to come into a little bit later, because you already sort of went into it with the Heimdall's travels.
Yes.
And it kind of fits into this whole thing. But we talked about like him going to thralls, and
Yes.
they were the lowest of the low
Yeah.
in the Viking Age society.
Yeah.
I mean, they were.
Yeah.
And still, he came to the house and he had a stew or a soup with meat and
Yes.
bread
Yes.
with leftovers, which we can assume maybe was some meat or whatever. So can we know how nourishing the food was for the average Viking Age person?
We probably can. To be honest, I haven't looked into that much. I'm not looking into nutritionists.
Oh, okay.
Yes, because that's. I mean,
okay. So,
what
would your guess be?
Yeah, my guess
based
is
in that?
yes, it is. I mean, you would have a fairly. I don't think we have. Well, of course, it's so. Yes, it is a fairly good nutritional value in the food, even for the thralls. I mean, you probably eat quite a lot of beans and peas. You will have some meat. You will have some grains. Probably grains would be quite common in the south, at least. But what you would have, the lower down in classes you go, the more prone you are to sort of having when there's a drought or something that because it's the lower you go, the more monocultural the food is.
Yeah.
The less diverse.
Yes.
So the more diverse it is, the more you're able to withstand when it's sort of, right, we don't have any turnips this year. Then if you can afford it, you can go for something else.
Mhm.
All right, we import bread.
Yeah.
But if you can't afford it, then you sort of have to thrive on what's there. And then you can get sort of lacking nutrition because you will have to, you only eat grains or you only eat this.
I guess scurvy could have been
Scurvy could be
a common problem. Yeah.
Yes, but also for instance, if you like the potato famine in Ireland.
In Ireland, yeah.
Yes, that's part of people being sort of forced into sort of just eating one thing.
Yes.
And when that goes away, it's
not good.
No, it's not good. so that would be a main problem, I'd say.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I think it's probably a fairly good diet.
Yeah.
Also, of course, you will have, even if you're in the lowest, you will have strategies to get around things as well. So one of the most clear examples of that, I think, this is not clearly sort of evidenced, but I think it's enough indicia to give this
like an indication.
An indication, yes. Yeah. So in northern Norway, in Lofoten, there is this huge longhouse.
Yes.
You visited it?
Yes, I have been.
Yes,
yeah.
It's really nice.
It's amazing. It's beautiful.
Yes. So in there, they find some food remains, of course. And most of it is in the sort of living areas. And then there is this huge longhouse. And it's in the farther end, it's sort of the farmhouse where they kept the animals. And in the furthest end of that, there's a small area with lots of seeds from lingonberries, crowberries, blueberries, just in a sort of... so then there's been sort of some imagination. What can that be? So my idea is that this is probably where the thralls were making alcohol. Because in Lofoten you can't afford... you don't have enough grain production to make beer. You have to import barley or beer. So then it will probably, most likely, only be served to the free people. To the people serving the Lord of the Manor or whatever. but the thralls would probably be out of beer.
Yes.
And if you should survive life like a thrall, you need something
to pick your spirits up.
Yes. So it is quite likely, I think, because it's also depending on how the area looks in Lofoten. Most of the thralls would probably have been sort of herding cattle, and you would go through areas where you have the berries growing.
Yeah.
So gathering some berries, because you don't find that much berries in other places. Gathering berries and fermenting them. And why would you do it in the furthest part of the sort of stall or the sort of animal?
Keep it secret, or
could be, but also if you look at traditional way of making sort of alcohol in odd places, put it down in manure.
The fermenting process.
Yes.
Oh,
it's warm. The heat will sort of help it ferment.
Of course.
So I think there's probably have been people knowing that you can make alcohol of this. And there's another indication sort of furthering this idea. It is that a bit later on in the 12th century, I think, there's a letter from the people in Greenland to the bishop in Norway saying that, well, we can't get hold of any wine for communion. And he tells them, I think that it's the bishop tells them, well, you can make wine of crowberries. That will be accepted.
Oh, okay.
So crowberry wine was a thing that sort of at least people were aware of.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that's so, I mean, yeah, making alcohol in manure, a lot of boiling, a lot of but how would people prepare for it? Like, how did people in general cook? Would it be like open fires, I guess?
Yes, open fires. It would probably be, I mean, in cauldrons, stone vessels. I would say, and this is also experimental based and also later or contemporary sources, but continental based sources. I would say you would make things in two batches. You will have the large iron cauldrons, for making stock. So you cook bones or the meat if you have that in a large iron cauldron. That will give you stock. You could put some things in a bag, boil it there, but you don't really want to have a lot of things floating around in that because of cleaning purposes, at least. But it's really useful to just make a small linen bag, fill it with stuff like grains or legumes, put it in, boil it with other stuff. And then you make like the finished thing, like a stew or a pottage or porridge in the stone vessels, in the soapstone vessels, which were really popular at the time.
Yeah. Are there many finds of the stone vessels?
Yes. There are finds all over Scandinavia.
Okay.
And also in some ships, sort of showing that they've been exported. And in Norway, it's even finds still left in the quarries. So a half-made soapstone vessel still in the quarry.
Okay, yeah.
So yes, it was really important, and it's sort of, you can see them being. So you have finds here in Sweden, where you can see how they've been mended.
I see. So so they're obviously very important stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not that expensive, but it's still expensive enough that you would mend it.
Yeah.
And so the advantage to pottery is, of course, that it's possible to mend it.
Yes.
It's a bit more heavy, but it will not break as easily.
Yeah, I see. So we talked now about like how would they eat at home, like how would they prepare the food at home, but what and how would they have eaten during raids? And I mean, if you think about the Great Heathen Army, for instance, with thousands of warriors invading a different country. I mean, obviously, like, how would they prepare the food? What would they eat?
I would say, well, that's a bit more difficult to say, of course. But I mean, we know from travels that they sort of will stop for the night and make. Actually, this is described being the porridge. So they have a large pot and they make the porridge, and this is described in not in raiding sort of context, because it's rarely described what you're eating in the raiding context. But yes, you will you have grain, make porridge during the evening, and the pot will be sort of communally used, a communal sort of porridge, and sort of if the next group will cook after that, and so on. During raids, of course, it is important to eat what you're raiding.
Yes.
So that will probably affect what you eat, because there is depends on the raid, of course. Are you raiding to just go in, take it, and leave, or are you raiding through during a time of war?
Yeah.
If you raid in time of war, you will take more than you need and eat it, because that will sort of impact your enemies.
Yes.
If you're just going to steal stuff, then you steal what you can, and you don't have it. Then you don't need to eat it during the travels.
Yeah, but it's still like with a massive army.
All right.
There would have been like a massive logistics.
Did
they bring food as well?
Yeah, I would say so. And I would say that what you bring, and that's sort of true up until the 16th century, is grains and stockfish.
Okay.
Those two are the things that you march on. It's later on you will add salted herring to that.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, the army will march on grains and the stockfish, because this will keep. Later on you will also have salted meat or dried meat. But I would say the stockfish is what we have in Scandinavia. You will have definitely the grains that will keep also for the travels across the water. It's just soak it, cook it, and it's keeps. Bread will mold.
Yeah.
Flour will mold.
Yeah.
Or bread will be either molded or dried.
Yes.
Dry out, and you will have worms in it.
Yeah.
So those two things I think they are really, really important for an army on the march.
Yeah. And then you eat what you can grab, basically.
Yeah, well, you would add things if you're in that kind of raid.
Yeah.
So yes, of course you will add things to the menu if you grab it on the way. That's part of war tactics all through history.
Yes.
My plan is to this summer do a workshop with food from food on ships from the Viking Age onwards in Medeltidsveckan. I think that's a plan for one of the workshop there.
So because that would be around like during travels. But,
yes.
So I assume then, if you go on like a long voyage, like over the Atlantic, for instance, to Iceland or Greenland, or even like to Vinland, North America.
Yeah, that will be a bit different. Yes, I would say the worst part would be Iceland to Greenland.
Yeah,
that's where you will have to suffer.
Yeah,
and what would you eat there? That's a bit more difficult. There are some descriptions, but which are strange. So I don't think we can rely on them. But what we can probably assume is that things like pickled kale, skyr, and dairy products, sour, they will keep as well.
Yes.
And you will probably keep them in sacks.
Yeah.
Or barrels, of course. But yes, I think these kind of things will keep better. You don't have to heat them up. With that, you could have some dried cheese that you sort of carve from, or smoked or dried meat that you also carve from meat. And then, like in Iceland, just eat pieces of dried cod.
Yes, yes.
So if you have that as a basis, you can sustain yourself a few days. But if you can, and that is important, if you can, you will stop during night and make landfall.
Yeah.
That is how most travels are described. But of course, going from Iceland to Greenland is a different story.
Yeah, it is. But I would imagine like the most difficult things would be fresh water as well.
Yes, of course. Yeah. But that's yes. So fresh water is probably not something you would have. Whey or beer would be much better.
Yeah, that keeps better. Yeah.
Keeps better.
Obviously, yeah.
So I would say probably, well, a strong beer would keep better, but I'm not sure if you would use that. But skyr would probably be the best, or the whey, using a heavy vessel of whey which you can drink from.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you're not lactose intolerant, you will do fine on that. It's really refreshing.
Yeah.
Or you can have a mixture of beer and whey, of course. I wanted to do, it's not happened yet, but do some cooperation with the Roskilde Skip Museum.
Yeah.
The Viking Ship Museum in
Yeah.
Roskilde. We talked that with some of them working there, looking into making a menu for what could people have eaten during the...
Yeah, maybe we should do a little shout out to the Roskilde people at the Roskilde Museum and like get in touch with this guy.
Yes. So
Daniel needs to talk to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like preserving food in general. I mean, you said dried meat, smoked, salted. Like, when did salting things come into the picture?
I would say, well, you have it early, but in Scandinavia, it is with the herring and the sort of 12th century, the herring trade. So we start getting the Hanseatic League start buying herring from southern Scandinavia, and in exchange we get salt from that area. I mean, so we do have some salt beforehand. We do import salt earlier, but it's in this period it sort of explodes, and it becomes part of a sort of economic engine in Scandinavia.
Yeah,
import salt, sell salted herring, and that's huge. It's sort of a massive industry.
Yeah.
Before that, I don't think we have really that amount of salt coming up here.
Yeah. But you mentioned also dairy was an important food source, especially further up north. But everybody knows that milk doesn't keep very well. So you talked about whey and stuff like that. But from what I understand, cheese was also a very important way to preserve dairy.
Cheese and butter are both really important ways of storing butter. I mean, later on, it's also became an economic part. You make cheese and butter and sell it or tax it and sell it off.
Yeah.
I think it is Gustav Vasa who pays a large amount of his debt to the Germans in cheese and butter.
Well,
yes, that's so. Yes, so this is really important part of your household economy.
Yeah,
but also, I mean, it keeps. You make cheese that can keep for a long time.
Yes.
You make butter, keeps for some time, but if you're like, I think in southern Norway, somewhere in southeast Sweden, and of course, mainly in Ireland, you tend to bury butter in bogs.
Oh, wow.
So bog butter is a really important find in Ireland. And I know they found it, I think it is in southern Norway as well. And I guess Bohuslän, Västergötland, thereabouts as well in Sweden, or Norway, Sweden. So yes, bog butter is you bury it in a bog.
Yeah.
And the acidity and the anaerobic environment keeps it.
Oh, wow.
So when people in Ireland excavate bog butter today, it is possible to recognize it as butter, even as, I mean, it changes quite a lot as well.
Yeah.
So it will not have the taste it has today, but it is something it is butter. And it's quite highly valued today. And I know that Norma has made experiments with burying it today and make.
Okay, so what does it? How does it taste?
I haven't had a
You haven't tried it?
I haven't had a chance to try it yet. So that's so that's another shout out. Yeah. If someone has, I know there's someone in Sweden doing it.
Okay,
and I think he was part of the Norma experiment. But I haven't.
Otherwise, you have to find a bog and
so
throw a chunk of butter in there.
So we can do that.
Yeah. Wow. But obviously, preserving food was immensely important.
Yes.
Up here in the north, because food during winter, what would that have been like? I mean, compared to other seasons.
So I mean, food in winter would have been. This is actually something that surprises people. Food in winter would have not been that bad, because this is after you made the harvest, after you made the slaughters. You have the most of the stuff during winter.
Oh.
So you have the dairy products, you make the cheese and the butter, you will not have fresh milk, but nobody drinks fresh milk anyway, except for children and old people. Yeah. So that's, so you will have that. You will have the newly slaughtered meat. You will have the harvest, the dried legumes.
Yeah.
You will have turnips will last for the winter. You put them in sand. You will have kale or sand kale or whatever you use, beach kale or whatever kind of kale you used.
Yeah.
Also keeps for the winter.
Plus, also kale almost grows the whole winter.
Exactly. So you will have that. So the winter is not that bad. Spring, on the other hand, that's when you will start scraping the barrel.
Yeah.
Quite literally.
I was actually also thinking that actually winter is also a big like ice box.
Yes, but yes, that's true. Yeah. But they didn't seem to have used the cold as much. Well, you use the cold indirectly when you do the slaughters. You wanted to do it. You don't slaughter in July or August.
Yeah.
You slaughter when it's fairly cold outside, so it doesn't really affect the food while you start preparing it. The same goes for the dried cod, but that's sort of connected to you fish it in December. That's when it moves around, I guess. And then you start hanging it January to summer.
Yes.
And it's cold enough for it not to start
to spoil.
Yeah. But it's warm enough for it to actually dry and not just be frozen.
Yeah.
So it's the right temperature.
Yeah. It's a whole science going into that. Yeah. But it's like it's interesting that like they preserved meat. They like planned for the whole winter and all that stuff. But did they have fast food? Like, were there any stuff they made? Like, oh, I have some hankering from some chicken today, and like.
Well, it was one of the dishes I do, which I think is sort of fast food. I mean, that's.
Yeah, I mean, fast food. Brackets, but
the simplest, the absolutely. Well, if you look at the sagas, I mean, the simplest thing would be just take some dried, some really old cheese that's hard as a brick.
Yeah.
Some old meat and just cut it up and have some bread on the side.
Oh, okay.
That would be fast food. That is today.
Like a Viking Age hamburger.
No.
Meat, cheese, and bread.
Yeah, but you don't eat it like that. And I mean, I say no vehemently because people when you say Viking Age hamburger or Viking Age pizza, people start getting the idea of. I mean, I've seen it in museums. I've seen it in sort of reenactorisms where people put it together in a way they wouldn't have.
Yeah,
so that's why I understand.
So they would have it on like and eat a piece of meat.
Yeah, more likely. Yeah, so like cold cuts.
Yes,
and actually in the saga, there's two brothers coming to this house, a sort of poor household, and they being offered this cold cuts, and they can't agree because they're deadly enemies. So they one night one of the brothers take the meat and the other take the cheese, and the other night they sort of compete to take the other way around.
Oh, okay.
So yes, that's. But yeah, that would be a way of eating something quickly. I would say another dish that I make that is actually based on a medieval description, but it fits very well in the Viking Age as well. It's just throw some turnips into the fire.
Oh, okay.
Roast, and that's really one of my favorite dishes as well.
Oh, nice.
Put the turnips in the fire. When they blacken, you can put a knife or something right through it. You take it out, scrape off the burnt parts, and then serve it with butter.
Sounds good.
It's really good.
It actually
really
sounds
simple.
good.
It's really simple because the turnips will sort of concentrate on the sweetness of it.
Yes.
So it will change taste a bit. And together with salty butter, it's really pairs off well.
I can imagine. Wow. So, like, Vikings had a lot of special type of food, but did any of it influence modern food, or is there anything we eat today that has its roots in the Viking Age? I mean, one of the things people often say, and I must admit that I've been one of those people saying like, well, we have the Christmas ham because of Sarimner, the mythological pig, and pickled herring is Viking Age food, but you already kind of debunked that. Yeah. So is there anything that we could definitely say is
not really? I mean, there's so much time and so much cultural changes going through. I mean, we have ingredients that are from the time. We have things that sort of connects, but not connects in a cultural way, I would say. I mean, drink culture perhaps is the most common thing we have. making sort of drinking for Christmas, drinking for marriages, that is something that goes back and lives on. But then again, every culture drink and use drinking as a connection. What else would I say then? So that I would say is the most important part. In Iceland, I would say that the sort of consumption of horse meat still has a connection to the Viking Age.
Yeah.
We stopped it. We didn't really keep up the horse meat tradition. So that's not really a thing either here.
Yeah.
So,
but horse meat obviously being important, and we already talked to Anders Khalif about the importance of horses.
Yes.
And all that aspect. But so what role did food have, like culturally and in rituals and ceremonies? I mean, horse meat, as you said already, in Iceland still is important.
Yes. Yes, it is. I mean, I think this is one of the most important parts when it comes to consumption. It's really interesting how it sort of plays out during the ages. So in the Viking Age, we find I think it's about 5% of the meats are horse. Of the sort of bones we find in a domestic context. And most of it are found, quite a lot of it is found in bogs, like in wells. And so you have this ritual connection. But then you have descriptions in sagas. And one of the sagas really clear about this is about Håkon the Good, who is being served horse meat. He's a Christian king. He's a newly Christian king. And he refuses it. So he's being served, first he's being served mead, and he's supposed to make the Thor sign on it, and he fakes it by making the cross. And so his jarl is sort of the mediator between the farmers who wants the king to sort of being the sort of officiant of this kind of ritual feast. Whereas the king is newly Christian and don't want anything to do with that. The jarl is in between, pragmatic, and wants to find a solution. So he says to the king, well, you make a cross sign, nobody will notice. And the king this and does that, and nobody notices. And the next part, he's being served horse meat, or horse meat stew. That's sort of the main thing of the party. And the king's saying, no, I can't eat that. I'm Christian. I can't eat horse meat. So the jarl is trying to negotiate with him. All right, can you take some of the soup? No. Or the broth, the stock? No. Can you skim off the fat from the top and eat that? No, that's still horse, so I can't do that. Still, it gives us some good clues to what they were serving. Then the king he says, well, can you just breathe in the fumes of the stew? And the king said, all right, I can do that. And then the next day, he being served this, he puts a towel on top of the cauldron, leans over and opens his mouth without inhaling.
Of course.
and then it's a lot of fighting and stuff happening. But so it gives an idea of the role of horse meat during the. And then we have the transition in Iceland from Christian from sort of pagan to Christian, and where they get sort of the conclusion that we'll be Christian, but we'll eat horse meat. Nobody's looking.
Okay, I didn't know that horse meat was like a taboo in Christianity.
But the thing is that there is some kind of it's not really taboo. There's a lot of things about this.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ideas about this. So you have, of course, the association of horse meat with pagan food in Scandinavia, in Germany, in England and Ireland makes it kind of a taboo. There's something that you shouldn't do because it's sort of hints of you being pagan. So in Norway, it's forbidden by law to eat horse meat.
Oh, okay.
At the time, at sort of 13th century, 12th century. But the Pope writes that you ought not to eat horse meat. So it's not really as firm. So it says you ought not to eat horse meat. But there's no real law against it. So the common tradition in Sweden is, since it's that we don't eat horse meat because the monks forbade it, and that's why we don't eat horse meat. I think it's more complex than that. And now I'm getting into sort of speculation.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes, and this is my theory, and I haven't written about it yet. I should, but so if someone else write about it, please refer to me. So my idea is that since we have this kind of importance during the Viking Age of horse meat, you will probably have specialists taking care of it, sort of slaughtering, and that taboo is sort of a positive taboo to start with. Only certain people can take care of it. Whereas when we get christened, there's nobody left to take care of it.
Of course.
And what happens in the medieval period, and that you probably know of, is have you heard of rackare?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the sort of the
what would be the rackare would be like the
it's
what would be the translation?
It would be the sorry.
The
executioner's not servant but apprentice. Executioner's apprentice. I think there is an English word for it. I can't recall it at the moment. You put it in the subtitles when you get it. But yes, so the executioner's apprentice.
Yeah,
he's in charge of slaughtering and taking care of dead horses.
Oh, okay.
And he's outside of society. So, and it all seems to be in all of Scandinavia, Germany, England, Ireland, fall in the lap of people outside of society to take care of dead horses. In Denmark in the 16th century, taboo is so strong that farmers will leave a dead horse in the middle of the street. Your horse die, you just walk away. So the Danish king sends out priests to touch dead horses to show that it's not dangerous.
Oh, wow.
Later on in Scandinavia, but I think earlier in England and Ireland, it's travelers who take care of dead horses. They're also take the slaughter horses, take care of dead horses. Gelding horses as well is their part because it's not something people in society touches.
It's interesting, but that's like post Viking Age that you're describing now.
Yes, but I think this gives us an idea of how, to my sort of my approach is that this gives us an idea of post Viking Age in medieval period that it's outside of society, and I think this is because in the Viking Age or pre-Christian periods in all these areas, it has been specialists taking care of dead horses. If this is religious food, you have a positive taboo. So it's not something you just slaughter for the fun of it or because you're hungry. It's someone is doing this because it's sort of sacred food from slaughter till. And of course, this I need to corroborate with people like Khalif
but it's absolutely fascinating. But so would it have been a taboo during Viking Age to eat horse meat except for during special rituals, or are there any other food taboos during the Viking Age that we know of?
Well, human food, human meat.
Yes, of course.
But no, not that I can see from the sources. Although I think there is a social taboo against, and this is a bit speculative, but if you look at the finds, there seems to be a social taboo against gathering shellfish and to some extent berries as well. But shellfish, it's very rare outside, so in Scandinavia. But if you go to Jorvik, Faroe Islands and Ireland, there you find it in Viking Age context. But in Scandinavia, it seems to be very rare in the finds, especially if you look into finds which is connected to where people were living, working. So you don't find much of shellfish. And the question is, why is that? I think it has something to do with it being something you collect.
Yes.
And there's a social taboo against that.
But what about obviously the term domesticated animals is quite wide, but like what we today consider pets, dogs and cats and stuff like that.
There are some, I think there are some finds of it, but not that common now. So it's, so yes, of course there is some social taboos against that, I think. I know there later on are religious taboos against eating it as well, but and then it's always distorted when it's famines. But so I think there is some taboo against that, but it's hard to describe what kind of taboo that is. If it's just sort of kind of social taboo that it's just something we don't do, or if it's something that's sort of clear that you should not eat it.
Like Viking Age history has become very popular in popular culture, like TVs and movies and stuff. And so, what do TV series and movies get right and wrong about the Viking Age food? Would you say?
That's a good question.
Yeah,
it's difficult. I think most things are wrong. I mean, you usually get this kind of whole roasts kind of culture. I mean, it goes both way. I mean, one of the first thing I saw about Viking food in sort of media is I think it's Raftingfluger.
Yeah,
where
great movie.
It's a great movie. Yeah. Really early in the sort of Viking, and of course the clothing, everything is bit off, but this is really good storytelling and almost spaghetti western kind of.
Oh yeah, definitely, very spaghetti western. Yeah.
But there they're being served a tray of boiled meat just being poured onto the table, and there we got sort of barbarian. I mean, it's boiled, that's good, but then again, it's sort of like people just clawing through bones with meat on it. And I think it's a bit more refined than that.
Yes.
On the other end, we have, like you would find in series today, is sort of this full roasted pig, which is probably not exactly what they would do either. I mean, it's mentioned at one point that they roast a full pig, but the prevalence in Viking Age depictions is it's far more common than it should be. And then I think you will present a sort of festive table with fruit or vegetable plates on the table to show opulence, and they probably wouldn't have this. I mean, like fresh fruits in bowls. That's not usually something you would serve.
Yeah.
So, and you will. I think that's as much as I have seen and sort of observed. I haven't been looking that much for it, because then I can't really watch anything. So that's one part of it. I think. I mean, that would be main. There are other parts, but as I said, they usually tend to do it very sort of bypassing. Food is not really that central.
Yeah.
So it's, but when it is like roasted meat. You're drinking, and well, that's always in media. People are always drinking mead, where people should be drinking beer.
Yeah, or water.
Yeah, water. To some extent, I would say beer.
Beers, maybe. Yeah.
I mean, at least for festive occasions. Water. It's an interesting question as well. Did they drink water? Yes, probably, but it depends on where you are. What sources do you have?
Yes.
So water is, but I mean, skyr, water, blending of low alcohol beer and skyr, these kind of things. But it's always, even the festive occasions, you would not always drink mead. It's very high and very exclusive. And if you do that, you would have some people drinking wine, which you never see either, or some occasions.
Yeah.
But yes, I think that's the most obvious fault that you see. This sort of connection, which is, I mean, that goes back to 19th century Germanic resurgence of interest in sort of mead and full whole roasted pigs. That's sort of 19th century fantasy of Viking Age.
Yeah. Because we went, the reason why we kind of brought this up is because we visited the set of Vikings
I see
numerous times. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Where these furnitures are from. And one thing we witnessed when we were there was part of the cast was partaking in trying out actual food people would have eaten during the Viking Age.
Okay.
And it was kind of interesting to see because they at some points really had hard times swallowing the food.
Okay,
but I think it wasn't prepared the way it is in this book. Obviously,
no. I was curious to what it was then.
I think they had like calf's brain and some stuff like that, intestine food. So I'm not sure how Viking aged it was really, but
no, but I mean, of course, they would have used intestines. But then the question is, how was it made?
Yes,
and there's another way, but it's not about the Viking media industry in a whole, but rather food depictions in on screen, or rather in when people are trying to do something about historical food, they tend to want to focus on the gross.
The gross,
the gross, sort of have people being sort of intimidated by it.
Yeah. Because this was like a segment outside of the TV series.
Yeah.
It was just something they did like for social media or something. But what I wanted to get to with this, like, obviously this seems odd to us today that they would but eat like this. But obviously food was a scarce commodity in many ways. And you would use,
of course, you would use everything,
every part of the animal as food. But what would you say is the most strange, or I don't know, if you want to focus on the gross, disgusting thing that you ever tried during your research?
A strange, I still will go with the sort of dried cod porridge.
Okay.
I think that's the sort of most surprising food taste element there. Gross, I'm not sure what that would be. I need to think about that because, of course, disclaimer.
Yeah.
For all these recipes that we made for the cookbook and the experimental archaeology, I can't deny that I'm starting with my own palate is part of it.
Yes.
I do get some positive experiences. Something that I didn't really expect, like the heart, spit roasted heart. I was not that much into intestine food before that, but it's gorgeous. So it goes that way. But when I do reconstructions, it's hard to make something that I would find too disgusting. To be quite honest.
Well, like in general, like if we not look at Viking Age food, like like you said, you already studied like Roman food and medieval food.
Yes. Have I really encountered? Yes. One thing, and that's actually what the cookbook I'm working on now is a Danish cookbook from the 13th century.
Mm-hmm.
And though the recipes there are gorgeous, the most of them are really tasting well. There is one recipe of chicken, like chicken rillette.
Okay.
It's sort of chicken meat cooked, boiled with almond milk till it's sort of falling apart. With lots of there's lard in it, but it's also lots of sugar.
Oh, that's
so yes. And to me, that's one thing I can't fit together: sugar and chicken meat.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine why that would be like a little bit weird. But
yes,
yeah.
So it's mainly 4 ingredients: chicken meat, almond milk, lard, and sugar.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very tasty to me, anyways. Then again, I'm not a big fan of chicken in the first place.
No, I like chicken. I like all the ingredients by itself, but sort of combination there's something that sort of clashes in my brain. For the Viking Age, I haven't found anything that's sort of that bizarre yet. I still have to. We don't have any recipes for brain in the cookbook. We have. We have liver, we have heart, we have tongue, but no stomach and no brain. So that's for an update.
Yeah.
But I have had stomach. That's not bad, and I have had brain. It was not my favorite, but it was edible. But again, it's all a question of how you cook things,
how you prepare it.
Yes, because you can do. Or you can prepare anything to make it disgusting.
Yes, that's true, actually.
So, there was the Swedish, I'm not sure if we can tell this, but this was a Swedish TV show where they would do historical food for the 16th century, 17th century, they baked whole fish in a bread.
Yeah.
And they served, what was chicken heads or something. They went intentionally disgusting.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, they still make that in Finland.
Yes, but but you can do it, and you can do it good.
Yeah.
But you can also do it in a way that doesn't fit. I mean, that's as I say, you can do things
so that
it is tasty. You can do things using some ideas and make it intentionally bad.
Of course, yeah.
And one thing I usually say, and that's sort of into a completely different track, but when you're looking at food, and this is part of reconstructing food, what the finds we have is like you take a cookbook, empty it out of all the ingredients, and just lay them out. It can be reconstructed in so many ways. To find it the right way, you need to connect it to culture, to cooking method, etc. And so you can take all the ingredients from this from the Viking Age and reconstruct it completely differently if you put in a different cultural context to it.
Yeah.
So and that's true for the medieval food, any food actually.
Yeah.
So if you take the modern Scandinavian food, put that in the hand of a Chinese chef, you will get some different result.
Of course. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So going back to the book, An Early Meal, as I said before, it's an impressive range of recipes that you have in here. You mentioned some favorites. Is there one that is like a particular favorite, or one that you would say is like a favorite that was unexpectedly a favorite of yours?
That's actually what I told you. That's what. I mentioned them already.
Yeah.
The favorite, one of the favorites is the kale and the kale pottage.
Okay,
that is really one of my favorites. It's the taste mixture makes it really good. The unexpected, or should I say, something I really got into, which I wasn't prepared to, was the heart.
Yeah.
Because I have had sort of bad feelings about intestine food. I gotten over that. I have too.
Yes, of course.
But still, I had some lingering sort of. But that was really good as well. So that's really also a sort of a favorite.
Yeah.
The porridges, simple, but they are really also something I do on a regular basis at home because it's easy to make. It's good. It's filling.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's also something that's sort of one of my favorites in the book for that reason.
Yeah. I know that I've been doing some of these recipes, and they're all really good.
What's your favorite?
I think still though the favorite that we did with Hannah, which I don't think is actually a recipe from here, but I think that beats the one. But like I forget now. I think I have to look through it.
Yes,
But it's some good stuff. I think we did some porridges and stuff like that, and they're all really good.
Yes.
So, do you think Viking Age people would have recognized the food from your book?
Oh, good question. I would like to think so.
Yeah.
I would like to think that they at least had I can recognize where it comes from. It could be, we wouldn't. Why do you season it like that? Or no, it's cooked. It's not cooked enough. It's cooked too much, or it's cooked. Smaller things like that. But I think it would be that most of the dishes they would recognize as, that could have been done here. It's probably would be the response would probably, this is not how I would make it.
Okay.
But that you would get anyway. Any recipe with any chef you will always get the responses. Well, it's good, but it's not how I would make it.
Yeah. So if you could time travel, do you think you'd be a culinary success in the Viking Age?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's might be that I could bring some. Well, I would like to. I would like to go there.
Yeah.
I'd like to taste it, and that. Yes, it's. I mean, it would be devastating if we could time travel. Then my work would be pointless. But still, yes, it would be really interesting to see. Would I be? I think I could do some. A fairly good impression, at least.
Yeah. So if you could go back in time and be a fly on the wall,
Yeah.
if not interact so much, what one thing would you like to experience?
I mean, it is everyday life. It is the food. It's the smells. It's the sort of the details of how things are prepared.
Yeah.
To go into the sort of larders where they keep like herbs and stuff to get some confirmations and new revelation of what they were using.
Yeah.
So that of course would be. I'm not too interested in the larger sort of in battles or warring or things like that, or visiting kings. But the kitchens, yes, but also other cultural impact, like the festive culture, when it comes to who's getting served what's the music like, what's the experience like. So all these kind of both festive and everyday experiences.
Yeah. We also always ask our guests this very important question. Would you like to have lived back then?
No.
Oh, that came quickly.
Yeah, no. I think I've been thinking about that question. I think I gotten it many years ago. That's when I started this, all this. But no, it's. I mean, there are several things in today that we have that we wouldn't have had at that time.
Of course,
it's. I mean, it's
just healthcare.
Yeah, healthcare. Yeah, that's the society as we have it today. I prefer it. So yes, I would not have liked to live in most historical periods, to be honest. And it's also a question of, quite often when people thinking of, well, if I lived in the Viking Age or the medieval period, ancient Egypt, people all imagine themselves being some kind of elite, sort of being the part of nobility, or chances are, if you lived in that period, you would have been a farmer or at best, you would be a trader of some kind.
Possibly a slave.
Yes, possible. Yeah, quite possible.
Yeah.
So, and then your conditions would be even worse.
Yes.
So no, I would not like to live in this.
Yeah, I think of all the guests that of all the guests we asked, only one has said yes. But yeah, it's funny. Anyhow, the book that you wrote together with Hannah Thunberg is called An Early Meal. It's fascinating. It has a lot of like historical references to the food along with the recipes. It's a really interesting book that you've created, and as we said, it's available on the Grimfrost website. So if you're into that kind of stuff, we really, really recommend it. Thank you so much for coming here today and talking to us. It was
thank you. It was fun.
Very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, good.
Good. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this episode, check out our other episodes on our YouTube channel, Spotify, and other podcast streaming services. And also, subscribe to support our work. Thanks for listening.